Hello there, welcome to the Wildcard Show. My name is Kyle Massa. Today on the show, we have lights in my eyes from the ring light here and my glasses. But more importantly, we have a demon horse from the new Magic set. So let's get into it and talk about Excava, the Risen Past. So here we go. All right, look at that. Okay, so Excava, the Risen Past, is a card that I just wrote about for EDH Rec. You might know me from there, write articles there, and I have for quite a while now. And so I wrote about Excava, and I just submitted the article today, so I kind of wanted to talk about this commander a little more right now on video. So partially this is... this is a personal vendetta is how I described it in the article. In my article, I predicted my gimmick as I do the over-under. I predict how popular commanders are going to be after a year, and the line is always 1,200 decks on EDH Rec. So I said over for Excava, and currently Excava, as of this morning, has 331 decks. So long way to go. Plenty of time, but still, I'm trying to pad the stats here a little bit, honestly. So maybe I can inspire you to build some decks with this commander to, help me out and help out my percentage. I would appreciate it. But beyond that, I actually do think that people are sleeping on this commander a little bit. I get it. It's kind of the secondary commander in this Lorehold commander deck. But at the same time, it's got a lot going for it, right? So let's read it first. So Excava, the Risen Past is 2 red and white for a legendary creature, Spirit Horse, flying in haste. It's a 3/3. And whenever Excava attacks, return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or non-aura enchantment card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. It's a 1/1 spirit creature with flying in addition to its other types. So that was a gigantic run-on sentence for that first one that your, grade school English teacher would be just offended by. But honestly, aside from that, I really like this commander. So I like that it costs 4 mana. I feel like that is a sweet spot for a lot of commanders. Because, you can have it as early as turn 2 if you have a turn 1 Soul Ring, or you can get it as early as turn 3 if you have like a turn 2 Arcane Signet or, some sort of 2 mana rock, which is, admittedly more likely, but still it's kind of a nice clean curve right there. And also, since Excava does have flying in haste, if you can get one of those prerequisite artifacts, creatures, non-aura enchantments that cost 3 or less into your yard before you play Excava, then you can cast it, attack, get it back already, and you've already got a bit of a train rolling there, which doesn't really work with horses. Horses can't really pull trains or ride on trains, but we'll go with it. So, as I mentioned, that's what Excava cares about. Creatures, artifacts, non-aura enchantments, which is, not clunky phrasing at all. So, let's go through category by category and kind of look at some of the ones that you're going to want to include in this deck. So right here, I've got 3 creatures for you, starting with White Mane Lion, which is 1 and a white. For a creature cat with flash, it's a 2/2, and when it enters, you return a creature you control to its owner's hand. This is not a good card, and you might be like, why is this, topping the list here? Well, we got to start somewhere. Number 2, I love cats, so it's a cat. But number 3, this is an instant speed way to protect our commander. It also costs 3 or less, so it's something that we can get back with Excava. And you'll find that the third most important factor that this card has going for it and that a lot of cards that we talk about today are going to have, is that they can get rid of those finality counters. So remember, when Excava brings stuff back, it comes with a finality counter. And I guess I didn't specify what that means. It's basically a counter that says, if this creature would die, you exile it instead. But it's a counter. So if you blink a creature with that counter on it, if you, with White Mane Lion, return it to your hand, if you remove the counter some other way, then the creature can die and go into the graveyard where Excava can get it back again. So that's kind of a neat little interaction there, and that's why we're kind of so interested in that effect. As you'll see, there are a lot of cards in the deck that can get rid of those finality counters. So then we have Selfless Spirit, which is 1 and a white for a spirit cleric creature with flying, 2/1. Sacrifice this creature. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. So I think that one's pretty obvious. Number 1, it protects you from board wipes. Can protect Excava from targeted removal. And of course, number 2, the spirit puts itself into the graveyard where Excava can get it back and do it again. And finally, we have Felia, Exuberant Shepherd. So we had a cat, now we have a dog. We're even here. We got 1 and a white for a 2/2 legendary creature dog, Flash. And it's got a lot of text. When Felia, Exuberant Shepherd enters exile up to 1 other target non-land permanent, at the beginning of the next end step, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it entered under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Felia. So this is from Modern Horizons 3, which is pound for pound, maybe it's certainly one of the most powerful sets ever printed. Maybe the most. I mean, you see even like commons, kind of reshaped Pauper. A lot of the common cards from that set you will actually see in Commander. Like the set is that good. So Felia was in that set, and I feel like me personally, I didn't really think much of the card. I'm pretty sure I gave it an under in my MH3 review, and I just wasn't that impressed by it. Excuse me. After playing it, the card is excellent. Most often, like I've played it in the Arena Powered Cube, and it just has so much utility because it comes in at instant speed. It can actually just execute tokens, essentially. It just eats them up, right? Because you attack, you exile the token, a token's gone. It doesn't come back. You can also notably remove counters from creatures. So if an opponent has a creature that they stacked a whole bunch of +1/+1 counters on them, you can reset it, which is great utility. In our deck, of course, what we're going to do is reset those finality counters. And then you can also do stuff like, exile your own stuff to put counters on it because the last line says if it comes in under your control, you get a counter with it. So there's actually like so much you can do with Felia, and it's a really awesome creature. And the last thing I want to mention too is that I learned this from the Arena Cube. It has a really nice combo with Containment Priest, which I don't have up here, but it's also 1 and a white for a 2/2 with Flash. And it says basically if a creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, it's exiled instead. So the idea with Felia is you can exile any of your opponent's creatures, and then on the end step, Felia says, okay, bring that creature back, but Containment Priest says, nope, that card's exiled instead. So you can just straight up exile your opponent's stuff. So you do have to be a little careful because it'll do the same to yours, but it's a really sweet 2-card combo. Okay, so those are the creatures. These are the artifacts. So first we've got Darksteel Ingot, which you probably know. It's just 3 generic for an artifact. It's indestructible, and it taps to add 1 mana of any color. So this card used to be like all the rage in EDH. It's certainly been power crept. It survives a Vandal Blast, but there are like so many better versions of this card that have been printed. But I like it in this deck because, number 1, it ramps. And it's not quite perfect because we don't care so much about the 3 mana spot in the curve. We would prefer to go 2, skip 3 into 4, right? Because then we can cast Excava. But it still does add mana. The best thing, though, is that you can almost treat it like an indestructible Birds of Paradise, because if Excava brings it back, it's a 1/1 spirit. But of course it still says indestructible on it, and it still taps for 1 mana of any color. So maybe a little more cute than good, but I do like that. Wayfarer's Bauble. This is a similar card. Used to be all the rage, not so much anymore, but it's 1 mana for an artifact. You can pay 2, sack it to basically rampant growth. I like that, in this deck you can kind of double up on that effect. And then, of course, there's Desecrated Tomb, which is 3 mana for an artifact. Whenever 1 or more creature cards leave your graveyard, you create a 1/1 bat. So note that it is creature cards. It's not any card leaving your graveyard. So that does kind of diminish the utility a little bit in this deck. But it still, can essentially double up on some of those 1/1 flyers coming back. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so I'm like losing my breath here. Going so fast. I'm trying to speed up the videos a little bit because I noticed some of them were a bit longer. So let me know what you think, if you like the longer ones, if you like this one that's a little shorter where I'm, running out of breath and I might pass out halfway through. Let me know if that's entertaining to you. Okay, so enchantments. We've got Touch the Spirit Realm, which is 2 and a white for an enchantment. And it's basically your standard Oblivion Ring, right? It exiles an artifact or a creature until it leaves the battlefield. But it also has channel, so that's 1 and a white. You can discard it to blink something. So obviously, again, that works with the Containment Priest I mentioned, where if you blink something and then you play Containment Priest, so specifically you would want to blink one of your opponent's somethings, it would not come back as long as Containment Priest is around. And now Touch the Spirit Realm is sitting in your graveyard because you channeled it, and you can bring it back with Excava to exile something else. So that's pretty cool, and that's why I like it here. Then we have Fable of the Mirror Breaker, which, breathe deep because this has a ton of text. It's 2 and a red for a saga. So chapter 1 is you create a 2/2 Goblin Shaman creature token with, when it attacks, you create a treasure. That was chapter 1. Chapter 2, you can discard up to 2 cards, and then you draw that many. And then chapter 3, you flip it over, and I'm doing this from memory because I don't have it up on the screen. But it basically becomes a 2/2. You can pay 1, tap it to copy, I think, a non-legend until end of turn. You create a token that's a copy of a non-legend. So honestly, this deck I would put in any red deck. It's hard for me to think of a red deck that doesn't want one of these wild abilities, let alone all of them, especially for 3 mana. But I like it here because note that, so let's say that you played the Fable and it died, then you brought it back with Excava. When it hits chapter 3, it exiles itself, meaning, once again, that finality counter would go away, so you can just bring it back again. So it's almost got extra utility on top of all the stuff it already does. So it's an incredible card. I would definitely recommend that one. And finally, Urza's Saga, which is another saga, as the title implies. And, it says chapter 1, Urza's Saga taps for colorless. This is such a weird card because I should go back. It's actually an enchantment land. It's a saga, but it's also a land, and I believe it's the only one in the game, at least for now. So chapter 1 is it taps to add a color, or a colorless, Chapter 2 is it gains the ability to tap to create a 0/0 with that gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. And then chapter 3 is you search your library for an artifact with mana cost 0 or 1 and put it onto the battlefield and then shuffle. So of course, after chapter 3 resolves, this isn't like Fable where it flips into something else. You actually have to sacrifice the saga. But still, you've replaced it with some artifact from your deck. Now, note that it has to have the exact mana cost of a 0 or a generic 1. You can't, fudge that. It has to be that one of those exact costs. But it's still an incredible card, especially because, once again, this is an enchantment, so you can bring it back with Excava. And also, chapter 2 has interesting timing because the trigger goes on the stack, so you actually have the opportunity to pay 2 before it is sacrificed for chapter 3 to get another one of those tokens. So just keep that in mind, that you know, ideally, if you have the 2 mana to spend, you will come away with not only that free artifact out of your deck, but 2 of those Karnstruct tokens is what people call them. So there was one more note I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, so you might have noticed that recently there was like a Reddit poll or something about the best, or no, I guess the greatest was the criteria. They called it the greatest Magic card printed in the past decade. And Urza's Saga actually won the readers poll. You know, people voted on it. It was a bracket style. And Saga beat, I think, Luris in the finals. So that was just kind of an interesting note. I'll see if I can link that in the show notes in the description. But I would kind of quibble with that, but hey, I mean, it's an outstanding card, and you know, the more I think about it, maybe I don't. The card's just kind of absurd. So, all right, and finally, we've got some other stuff. The 3 I've got here: Fear of Missing Out, for starters, is 1 and a red for a 2/3 enchantment creature Nightmare. When it enters, you discard a card, then draw a card. And it has Delirium, which is one of my favorite mechanics of all time. So basically you have Delirium when you have 4 or more different card types in your graveyard. So that's like enchantment, creature, artifact, land, all that good stuff. So when FOMO attacks for the first time each turn, if you have Delirium, you get to untap target creature, and then after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So why do we care about extra combats? Well, if we look back at Excava, we see that our horse triggers on attacks, right? So this is a great way to get multiple triggers and bring back multiple permanents from the graveyard. Not to mention that Fear Missing Out, you have to discard a card when it enters. So you could discard something and then attack with Excava and immediately bring it back. And if you have Delirium, you get to do it again. So that's pretty cool. Pretty nifty little combo there. Then we also have Reconnaissance. So this is an old card from Exodus, I think, is that set. So it's 1 white for an enchantment, and you can pay 0 to remove target attacking creature you control from combat and untap it. So this is just a bizarre card, and you might read this and be like, why would I ever want this? I think the idea was that like it protects you from combat tricks and limited, but you know, and I'm sure it has other uses as well. But at least in this deck, the idea is that you can attack with Excava, and you can make any attack you want, even a jump attack, because you can just use Reconnaissance to take it back. But you still get the attack trigger, and you still get to bring something back. That is a note about this deck as well, is that people might get a little annoyed because you have to attack to get any value off your commander. So people might get annoyed that you're like chipping at them, and even though it's only 3 damage at a time, they might be like, why are you attacking me? So I wrote in the article, and I continue to think that this deck, you know, will help if you're like a smooth talker and able to like talk people down and sort of explain like, hey, it's nothing personal, I just need the value. But this sort of card also helps because then you can attack without actually damaging anybody, and then it's like they don't really have anything to be mad at. Finally, we have here what is probably the best card in the deck, which is kind of wild to say about a colorless land. But this is Nesting Grounds. It's a land that taps for colorless, and you can pay 1 and tap it to move a counter from target permanent you control onto another target permanent, and you can only do that as a sorcery. Now, why is that so good? Well, once again, finality counters. Again, the counter says if this thing would die, it's exiled instead. So with Nesting Grounds, you bring something back with Excava. It's got the finality counter sitting on it. You use Nesting Grounds to move it onto some problematic permanent that your opponents control. And now whenever it dies, it's exiled, which is really sweet. And note that it is permanent. So you could put this on like, Ristic study or something. And when somebody destroys it, it's exiled instead, so it's not coming back. So that is an incredible card and a massive overperformer in this deck. So that's it. We're at 20 minutes. Get on your horse and ride, to paraphrase Queen. That is Excava the Risen Past. So as I'm recording this, I just submitted the article this morning. And I'm hoping to put this video out soon. So I think that the video will come out before the article does, but at any rate, once the link is out, I will certainly link it here so that you can read it. I go into way more depth about some other cards in the deck and some other card choices, and there's even like a sample deck list there too. So we've got that. I also do have an affiliate code with Mana Pool. So if you want to buy this whole deck, once you see the deck list, you can do that on Mana Pool, which is really cool. They're the place that I get all my cards online. So if you check out the affiliate code, it just lets them know that I sent you, and I would really appreciate it. And of course, finally, I am also on Substack. So I write articles weekly there. I post some of these videos there. I post random thoughts there. So if you want to support me, it's sort of like a Patreon, where you can sort of give monthly and you get extra stuff for doing so. And of course, you get my gratitude. And actually, one more thing you get is a card in the mail from my personal collection. I will send you a card. It might even be Excava. So anyway, that's Excava. I'm Kyle. This is Wildcard MTG. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.